Welcome back, guys. My name's Shane. Today I'm going to give you the best 9 alternatives to buying a USA-made Gibson Les Paul Standard. Not everyone can afford a Gibson Les Paul Standard. I'm not discouraging anyone from buying one. They're iconic guitars. A lot of people love them, including myself. So we're going to give you the best 9 inexpensive alternatives that kind of creep up in price a little bit along the way, but are still far less expensive than buying an actual Gibson. Let's get into it. The first guitar on this list has to be the Artist LP 59 CSB electric guitar. It looks a lot like my Tokai Love Rock over here. This is a really beautiful instrument coming in around 449 Australian dollars. You can get these not only in Australia, but also in New Zealand, and I think now also in the UK, which is great. These guitars are on par or better than just about everything on this list that's up to about twice the price. They didn't start out that way though, so about a year and a half ago, I got to test a few of them and I kept sending them back because they weren't very good. They got a new manufacturer and the quality control just went right up, and they not only feel great to play, they look unreal, and they just sound great. The pickups, you can also split to single coil if you don't want to just play in humbucker mode, and they actually work. You know, I've tested a lot of guitars over the years that do that split coil thing and they don't do it very well. I think this Artist LP59 CSB split coils the tones better than my actual PRS SC. It just sounds fuller and nicer to my ear, at least anyway. So overall, it's a really nice guitar. Big neck, they can be a little bit heavy, but the pros far outweigh the cons. And if you're in Australia and you don't want to take a chance on some of those Harley Benton guitars, you know, having to order them from outside of Australia, then the Artist stuff would definitely be the go. Up next, we're going to talk about the Holley Bends SC 450 Plus. Now, my particular one arrived with a few dings and scratches and marks on it, but with that aside, just in terms of playability and sound, this is easily up there with the Artist guitar. I'd probably put the Artist guitar slightly ahead of this one in terms of how it feels to play and just the overall look of it. But this is still a really beautiful looking guitar, minus the fact it did have a few flaws after shipping. But I got to tell you, in terms of the neck shape, the binding, you're getting a lot of really great appointments on this instrument. You can also split coil the pickups as well. So this is very, very similar to the last guitar I mentioned. But one of the really cool things about Harley Benton is they also make a few others. I'm just trying to swivel this microphone around here. They also make this. This is the Harley Benton DC Junior, which is loaded with a single P90 pickup. This is my favorite Harley Benton ever. I love this thing. They also make a single cut one, which doesn't have this cutaway here. So it looks more like a traditional Les Paul. And these are some of the least expensive guitars they make. And I love this. I've taken this out and I've played it live. And you've seen it on countless videos on the channel since it arrived. For the kind of price they're asking for this, I think it's an absolute no-brainer. If you're interested in any of the guitars on this list too, links will be in the description. The third guitar on this list is still very inexpensive, and if you're lucky enough to be able to get them in your part of the world, just check on eBay or wherever. You'll be in for an absolute treat. I've owned a couple of these over the years. I owned an SG and also a Les Paul, and this is Tokai. So Tokai make not only great guitars made in Japan, like my one over here, they also make some really great guitars made in China that come in less expensive in most cases than the Epiphone counterparts. So they're really worth looking for if you can get your hands on one. One of the great things about these Chinese-made electric guitars from Tokai is the fact they don't hold their value very well at all. So if you can find one on the used market somewhere at a second-hand shop or, you know, a used guitar recycle kind of joint, you're going to be able to find them at an absolute bargain. I wouldn't overpay for these. Find the actual price of them at retail and halve it and maybe even take off a bit. That's kind of where you're about to buy them at. It's a real buyer's market right now, especially for sort of Chinese and Japanese made instruments. They just don't hold their value as well. And that's not to say they're not good instruments, but they just don't hold their value that well. So yeah, if you can find a Tokai Love Rock made in China, you're in for an absolute treat. I've owned one. I've done recordings with them and albums with them. I think they're really cool. Up next is a guitar brand that you've seen on the channel, but you haven't actually seen these guitars on the channel because they don't make them in a left-handed configuration. But if you're a right-handed player, I think you're going to get a kick out of these. These are SX guitars. Now that's just an S with an X. They make not only a Strat and a Tele, which I've both owned and you've seen them on the channel, and I actually put them in the lists of best Strat and Tele alternatives. If you missed that video, I'll leave links up here as well. But their Les Paul style guitars are absolutely beautiful. Some of the best tops I've seen. One of the ones that stands out to me is the EH3D DS. I think this looks like a really premium instrument. These come in at around $400 thereabouts in Australia, somewhere around there. The price can fluctuate depending on the dollar and all that kind of thing, but these are easily visually as beautiful as the artist and the Harley Benton. I would actually put them probably ahead of that just in terms of their visuals. So if you can get your hands on an SX guitar, that one of these series ones, I'll leave some links below so you can check out the official website and put some pictures on screen. These look really, really stunning. I can highly recommend them if you're on a budget, but you want that sort of Les Paul tone. So give these a look. They're not everywhere in the world, but being that we're a global audience, I'm trying to put stuff that you can find all over the place. So SX guitars coming in at number 4. This list wouldn't be complete without adding this next brand in here. So Epiphone. Epiphone makes so many great guitars at different price points. So a couple of years back, I got to play in San Francisco in California, and I had my hands on an Epiphone Les Paul Special 2, one of the sort of more entry-level guitars. These are only worth a couple of $100 in the US, and they're unbelievable. I did a number of gigs with that just through a really cheap amp as well, and it sounded like $1 million. It was a really great instrument. Another really solid instrument at a slightly higher price point, or maybe double the price, I guess, depending on where you live, of course, is the Epiphone Les Paul Custom Pro. I had a chance to review one of these last year. What a beautiful instrument. The split coil tones sound really great. It's very similar to some of the others that I've added on this list as well in terms of its capability with the split coil and all the different kinds of tones you can get out of it. But the split coil tones sounded better than the Gibson counterpart. And this was one of those sort of blue Gibsons that I sort of tested it against. I much preferred the Epiphone. So Epiphone make a great selection of guitars at just about any price point, starting from $139. Look, I probably wouldn't go for those guitars at that kind of price, but as you start stepping it up a little bit, you're going to get a really solid instrument that's going to be 90% of the way there of a Gibson, worth thousands of dollars more. So definitely give Epiphone a look. I'll leave some links below. Coming in at the 6th spot is the PRS SE Single Cut. These guitars are fantastic. For those who don't know, I actually own a PRS SE Custom 24, and I really believe it's my most playable guitar. Everything about it is great. And these PRS SE single cuts are so good that my guitar friend Dr. Rick, who you've seen on the channel a million times, he actually owns one. I can't believe it. He only goes for top-end instruments. He came across one of these and he couldn't live without it. Now, he bought the one with the single P90 in the bridge, so it's a very simple single cut type of guitar, very similar, to, I guess, to the Harley Benton counterpart, but much more premium in terms of how it feels in the hand. It's got a bit of a fatter neck and it ticks a few other boxes for him, which is really cool. Now, they also make dual humbucker guitar versions of the same guitar, the single cuts. You can also find some with also F-holes as well, which is a really great addition. So you get more range, especially if you're a right-hander. I don't think they make lefties in the single cuts because I've never seen one anywhere. But if you're a right-hander and you want to spend a little bit more money and get something a little bit different, then check out the PRS SE guitars. I think they're a really solid instrument. Like I said, I've been playing my SE for ages and I love it. So coming in at number 6 are the PRS SE single cuts. This next brand on the list is something that you've seen on the channel about 3 or 4 years ago when I got to test a whole lot of them out at Jerry's Lefty Guitars in Sarasota, Florida. And this is Eastman guitars. Now, since I've done those videos, the price on those guitars, not at Jerry's, but just globally, has gone up a lot. So you kind of get some guitars that are really affordable and they're really playable and they look beautiful. And then you get some guitars that are really pushing the price up to about $2,500 US. So that's getting right up there. And that might not be justifiable if you're looking for a Les Paul. Depending on where you live, you can get a used one for easily that price, right? Or even a new one, probably some of the other models as well. So yeah, you got to sort of weigh up whether or not that's worth it at the higher end of the Eastman market. But if you are shopping on the secondhand market or you find these used, they're definitely a guitar that won't hold their value anywhere near as well as the Gibson. So you can generally find them for an absolute bargain. So Eastman guitars make beautiful instruments. I played their 335s and also some of their archtop guitars as well as their Les Pauls, and there's not really any complaints about them. They feel good in the hand, they sound great, and they're not overly heavy as well, which is another thing I really like about it. I haven't played them all, obviously, but the ones I've tried feel really great to play. So overall, Eastman guitars are definitely worth it. I would opt to find these if you can on the used market, if they're available in your part of the world, because yeah, you won't be paying full price at the high end of the market for these on the used market. So definitely give that a shot. Coming in at number 8 is a guitar brand that I really love, but it can also be inclusive of a lot of other brands, which I'll mention in this number 8 spot. So I own this. This is a Tokiso Love Rock electric guitar. If you're a long-term subscriber, odds are you would have seen this one coming. But it's a really beautiful guitar, made in Japan. One of the first lawsuit guitars. This isn't a vintage one by any stretch of the imagination. I bought this about 5 years ago. It has the same style headstock. It just does everything that a Gibson does. It's a really beautiful instrument, except it doesn't cost anywhere near as much money. This comes in at just over half as expensive. So it's starting to push up to around the $2,000 mark. I think since the dollar changes and fluctuates from the time of purchase to now, this might be more expensive now than when I first purchased it. But the great thing about Japanese guitars, whether it's a Tokai, an Orville, a Greco, a Fernandez, or any of these other Japanese brands, is they're really, really good. The quality control was not only fantastic, but you're getting a guitar that won't cost you anywhere near the same amount of money. I've known guys that have played these since the 70s, or maybe the 80s actually here in Australia. So yeah, beautiful instruments, and they sound and play just as well as any Gibson out there, except they're not going to cost you anywhere near the same amount of money. This Tokai LS110 cost me $1,800 here in Australia at the time I purchased it brand new. If I was to buy this in the secondhand market, you get it for probably $900. If you were to buy a Gibson of the same quality and standard of this, one of their standards, in Australia cost you around $3,300. So it's a huge saving. You're getting a really great guitar. On to the next one. Coming in at the 9th spot and final placing before we get to some honorable mentions is this. I really believe this is the best alternative to a USA-made Gibson Les Paul Standard, which costs quite a lot of money. And this is the Gibson Les Paul Special. This is one in TV yellow, and it doesn't have to just be a Gibson Les Paul Special because I've got one. I've also owned a number of the studio models over the years as well, and they're a great alternative to paying the premium sort of price of a USA-made Gibson Les Paul Standard. So one of the really cool things about the studio models, for example, is they're a little bit more bare bones, but what you get is just great sounding pickups, great hardware, and they tick a lot of the boxes visually as well. I think some of the ones that I've owned over the years have been really cool. I used to have a P91 that had a gold top on it and it looked really beautiful. One of the small trade-offs was the neck. Didn't feel anywhere near as nice just in terms of its finish as the Gibson Les Paul standards. But in terms of this studio and some of the newer models, Gibson are really knocking it out of the park. So I can highly recommend this as the best inexpensive alternative, or slightly less expensive alternative, I guess now, to Gibson Les Paul Standard. So I have no problems recommending this guitar. One of the great things about it is it's super light. It's as light as the Harley Benton DC Junior over there. It weighs next to nothing. This particular model, loaded with 2 P90 pickups, is just the one that I wanted, but you can get ones that have humbuckers as well in the tribute models, as well as some of the special models. If you're shopping on the used market, you'll find them no problems at all, and they're generally way less expensive, and they're a very solid instrument. So let me know what you think of this list. Right now though, we're going to get over to some honorable mentions. The next few guitars on this list is something that I just wanted to include because I know a lot of people will be screaming at the screen like, what about this brand? What about that brand? So I'm going to put them in this particular section. Just know though, I haven't had a chance to test out every guitar on the market, but I've seen some of these in person as well in a right-handed configuration. So that's why I'm going to add them to the list. So the first one that I'm going to put on this list is for the entry-level sort of budget buyer who might want a good Les Paul that does the job. Now, when I first started playing, this brand was something that was kind of avoided on the most part, but they got a whole lot better once the Greg Bennett name got on there, and that's the Samick Greg Bennett Les Paul style electric guitars. Great instruments, pretty solid, up there with some of the others on this list in terms of how they look, being that I haven't played a lefty, I haven't actually tried one, but I've seen them, and I see people in the comments always writing, hey, you should try one, you should try one. I just haven't seen a lefty anywhere. If that comes up in the future, I'll definitely give them a go. The other brand I have to put on this list is ESP. They make some really beautiful looking Les Paul electric guitars at all kinds of price points. In the US, they start from around $499 or $399 actually, and they go up to as much as you want to spend. So in terms of ESP guitars, that's another brand I haven't actually played a lefty, at least to my recollection. I've seen a lot of them around. They look like really solid instruments, but I haven't tried one personally, which is why it didn't make it on the prior list. But I think they look like $1,000,000, and if I have a chance to try lefty down the track, I'm definitely going to do so. If you've had experience with ESP guitar before, let me know in the comments. Let me know what you think of it in comparison to some of the others on this list. Thanks for watching, folks. My name's Shane. If you want to find out the best alternatives to a Telecaster or Stratocaster, I'll leave some links either up here if I'm not out of spots or down in the description. You can click through and check out those videos as well. I like to put these videos together because everyone's on a different budget. And being that I've had so many guitars in my hands over the years, even as a lefty, I've been fortunate enough to try so many different guitars and see so many different guitars that hopefully this video is helpful. If it was, please give it a thumbs up. I really appreciate that. And I'll catch you on the next video. See ya.